Imagine a world where one of the largest contributors to global emissions starts reversing its carbon footprint. That's exactly what's happening in China, as record solar energy growth drives a notable decline in CO2 emissions during the first half of 2025. But this story isn't just about clean energy triumphs. It's also riddled with challenges that could determine whether China meets its ambitious climate goals or falls short. And here's the twist. While solar and wind power are booming, coal is still expanding, raising questions about how sustainable this progress really is. Let's dive into the details and explore what this means for China and the planet. In the first 6 months of 2025, China's CO2 emissions dropped by 1% compared to the same period the previous year. This marks a continuation of a downward trend that began in March 2024. The most significant contributor? The power sector, which accounts for the lion's share of the nation's emissions, saw a 3% reduction in CO2 output. Remarkably, the surge in solar energy production alone matched the increase in electricity demand during this time. This analysis reveals something truly groundbreaking. Record-breaking additions in solar capacity are setting the stage for an even larger drop in CO2 emissions across all of 2025. To put it simply, China's clean energy revolution is accelerating at a pace few predicted. For instance, clean power generation, excluding hydropower, grew by an impressive 270 terawatt-hours, TWh, far outpacing the 170 terawatt-hour rise in electricity demand. Solar installations reached dizzying heights, with 212 gigawatts, GW, added in the first half of the year, a figure that eclipses the total installed capacity of many countries. But here's where it gets controversial. Despite these gains, China's coal-fired power capacity is also surging. Estimates suggest that coal plants could add between 80 to 100 gigawatts of capacity this year, potentially setting a new annual record. However, there's a catch. Coal-fired electricity generation itself is declining. Instead, coal is increasingly being used to produce synthetic fuels and chemicals, an area that's seen a staggering 20% growth in the first half of 2025. Since 2020, this sector has contributed an additional 3% to China's overall CO2 emissions. Even more concerning, plans for further expansion in the coal-to-chemicals industry could add another 2% to the country's emissions by 2029, making it harder to meet the 2030 deadline for peaking emissions. Now let's break down why this matters. The reductions in emissions were driven primarily by 3 sectors: power, cement, and steel. Coal use in the power industry fell by 3.4%, while natural gas use rose by 6%, leading to a 3.2% drop in emissions from the sector. Cement production dropped by 4%, and steel output declined by 3%, both reflecting the ongoing contraction in construction activity. Real estate investment plummeted by 11%, and new construction starts shrank by 20%. Traditional infrastructure projects like transportation showed sluggish growth, adding to the slowdown. However, not everything is rosy. While electric arc furnace, EAF, steelmaking, a cleaner alternative to coal-based methods, is gaining traction, its adoption remains slow. In fact, the share of EAF steelmaking in total production fell slightly from 10.2% in 2024 to 9.8% in early 2025, missing the government's target of 15%. Why? Excess coal-based capacity and insufficient incentives mean that EAF producers often bear the brunt of reduced output as they face higher operating costs and lower startup expenses compared to traditional coal mills. On the brighter side, solar energy is stealing the spotlight. In May alone, China added 93 gigawatts of solar capacity, translating to approximately 100 solar panels installed every second. This unprecedented growth was fueled by a rush to install before a June policy change that altered pricing structures for renewables. Under the new rules, solar and wind projects must now secure direct contracts with buyers, creating uncertainty and likely pressuring revenues. Despite this, projections indicate that solar will overtake wind and possibly hydro as the largest source of clean power in China this year. And yet, the story doesn't end there. While solar and wind are thriving, grid management issues are limiting their potential. Curtailment rates, the percentage of potential solar output not utilized, rose to 5.7% in early 2025, up from 3.2% the previous year. Addressing these bottlenecks will be crucial to unlocking the full benefits of renewable energy. So, what does this mean for China's future? If current trends hold, the nation is on track to reduce emissions further in 2025, potentially peaking earlier than its 2030 target. Yet challenges remain. Policymakers must address missed targets related to carbon intensity, coal consumption, and clean manufacturing processes. Achieving these goals will require bold action in the upcoming 15th Five-Year Plan, 2026 to 2030. And China's next nationally determined contribution, NDC, under the Paris Agreement. Here's a thought-provoking question. Can China balance its reliance on coal with its commitment to clean energy? Or will the continued expansion of coal to chemicals undermine its climate ambitions? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take.